How many coughing babies would beat ...
Hey Bozo, little boy versus little boy. In many internet subcultures, the comparison between a coughing baby and a nuclear bomb is often used to express the unfairness of a matchup. On one side, we've got the overwhelming strength of the most powerful device conceived by man, and on the other,
How many coughing babies to beat an atomic bomb? I think the number is yet to be decided. I don't think coughing babies would beat an atomic bomb.
we've got the most feeble of creatures, further debuffed by sickness. It's obvious to anyone that a nuclear bomb is so much stronger than a coughing baby. But what I want to know is by how much? How many coughing babies?
I genuinely think a coughing baby would not be able to beat an atomic bomb because a bomb would hit the ground and kill all of them in the vicinity. You'd have to have a coughing baby outside of the bomb that doesn't get affected by any radiation or anything like that afterwards. You have to have a coughing baby that just lives and succeeds, and that coughing baby beats the atomic bomb.
Would it take to defeat a nuclear bomb? Before we begin, I want to
I
put
think you
out
have
the
a point
disclaimer
next
that
video.
I am by no means an expert on nuclear weapons or physics. I was a baby at one point, so I do have some knowledge on the matter, but it's been a couple of years since I've practiced, so I'm a little out of touch. I will get things wrong. My numbers may be off, or I might make a statement that turns out to be false. So, if we have any nuclear bombs or coughing babies in the chat, please point out my mistakes in the comments. Onto the video. Our answer is 10,256,410,257. Or 1. Before we move on to calculations, how can one actually defeat a nuclear bomb? If the goal is just to survive the explosion, then all we need is one baby placed at sufficient distance. If the goal is just to match its destructive capability, then all we need is just one baby moving at sufficient velocity. If we were allowed to use any baby in fiction, then I would just pick the Child of Alara or those Time babies from regular show. What I'm saying is, in order to come up with a definitive answer, we really have to nail down the starting conditions and win state of this thought experiment. So, let's do just that. I am of the belief that a meaningful win can only be achieved when you fight your opponent at their best. And the best, in this case, is the explosion. In order to win, we must be able to block, redirect, or cancel out the ungodly power of its nuclear blast.
How would a coughing baby redirect an atomic bomb? Even 10 billion coughing babies, how would they redirect an atomic bomb? It hits the ground and it detonates. They are dead. Unless they're outside of the vicinity, they are dead.
Using only the meager power of babies. Average, non-fictional human babies starting at rest with no additional energy put into the system. To this end, I've come up with two scenarios: the baby barrier and the baby array. The first, more depressing option is to smother the energy of its explosion with sheer mass and volume. Sort of like how an underground test could contain an atomic blast by burying the bomb deep enough. Because of the demonetization risk, how many blocks of ballistics gel would it take to create a barrier so thick that a person standing behind them would remain unharmed? Well, the answer would depend on the size and type of bomb and how durable we think a block of ballistics gel would.
I'm saying a atomic bomb dropped down, not an atomic bomb that is sitting there. The babies aren't surrounding the atomic bomb. How do the babies survive the blast?
be. Nuclear bombs can be differentiated by the method in which they produce a big boom. First, there is fission, where a large atom like uranium or plutonium is broken apart and, like a rubber band snapping under tension, releases a ton of energy all at once. Then, there's fusion, the reaction that powers our sun. Here, small atoms are combined under insane heat and pressure, releasing lots of energy as they lock into place. Generally, a smaller explosion is used to kickstart the process, just like how we use a lighter to start a firework, or how the firing pin strikes a primer to fire a bullet. To achieve the extreme conditions that nukes demand, we're gonna need
Alright,
something
Jacob, see ya.
drastic to get the ball rolling. For gun types like Little Boy, a conventional explosive is used to smash one glob of radioactive material into another. For implosion types like Fat Man, a series of shaped charges compresses a fuel core from all sides. Finally, for hydrogen bombs like the Tsar Bomba, I kid you not, a smaller nuclear bomb is used. As you can probably guess, I described the three bombs in this order on purpose. I went from the weakest design to the strongest, or the least efficient to the most efficient. See, a problem with nukes is that their power source blows itself apart as soon as things get going. Even though its fuel is being squeezed under immense forces and pressures, the amount of energy produced by a single nuclear reaction is so astronomical that only a fraction of the material is spent before the explosion breaks containment, something that only takes milliseconds. As such, the effectiveness of a bomb can be largely attributed to the percentage of fuel that is spent before it blows itself apart. We can always add more and more material to achieve a bigger blast, but because of the differences in fuel efficiency, the approach we take will be the main influence on total baby expenditure. For example, Little Boy had 64 kilograms of fuel and was beaten out by Fat Man, which had only 6.2. I couldn't find any official measurements for the Tsar Bomba, but by comparing it to smaller hydrogen bombs, we can guess that it had 25 times more fuel while making an explosion 3,500 times more powerful. Little side point here, I may be comparing apples to oranges as these weights are the weights of different materials. Little Boy used uranium, Fat Man used plutonium, and the Tsar Bomba used a hydrogen compound called lithium-6 deuterium. The different power to weight ratios might be there because one type of bomb just uses more volatile fuel. I may be wrong in saying this, but I don't think this is the case. If Little Boy used plutonium, it would have prematurely fired due to the material's sensitivity. If Little Boy had ham in it, it would have been much closer to a British carbonara, and if Little Boy used the same fuel as the Tsar Bomba, it probably wouldn't have the starting energy to explode in the first place. Point is, the approach necessitates the fuel choice, and thus is still the biggest influence on the bomb's destructive capabilities. Okay, that's a lot of explanations and very cool animations to take in all at once, so we should probably take a break. Stretch out some kinks in your 25 to 34-year-old male body, blink a couple times, maybe watch a mid-roll.
I'm not 25 or 234. I'm under. Does that mean I'm watching a video that's not meant for me?
Okay, you back? How much energy does it take to obliterate a 10-kilogram block of ballistics gel? Sorry, I want to get paid for this. The average baby weighs 9 to 10 kilos at 12 months old. Any older and they cease to be babies, as this is around the time when they start to walk unsteadily or toddle, hence the term toddler. Because it's a good approximation of animal tissue, ballistics gelatin will be our stand-in for this hypothetical. To find out the exact number of blocks we need, all we need to do is divide the total energy by the amount of energy each block can take. For the total energy, the Tsar Bomba released approximately 240 petajoules. That is a 240 with 15 zeros behind it. That's a mind-boggling amount, so much so that it's hard to visualize just how much energy that actually is. But it's not enough to stop me from trying though. To put it into perspective, this is enough energy to power a large country for an hour. Converted to fuel, it can perform the moon landing over 4,000 times. If Mike Tyson in his prime were to punch you with the strongest punch every second, you would have to sit there for almost 5 million years. Far from a localized event, when the bomb exploded, it was a worldwide incident that made entire continents tremble. For the amount of energy each block can take, we can conveniently use the recipe of ballistics gel. General consensus for a nicely calibrated block would be a 10% mix, that is, 1 part powder to 9 parts water. Meaning, for our 10 kilogram example, that would be about 9 liters of liquid. The energy needed to heat and vaporize this amount from room temperature is around 23 megajoules. I don't know how much energy it would take to obliterate the powder, so I'll be excluding that from the calculation. Doing the division, we get a baseline estimate of 10,256,410,257. To make this amount of blocks, we would need the water of tens of thousands of Olympic swimming pools, enveloping the bomb in a sphere half a kilometer wide. Astute viewers might have heard me say the word baseline. This number, although monumental, is something that I have egregiously lowballed. To start, ballistics gel was designed for bullet testing, and is a bad proxy in terms of vaporization. Babies are around 65% water, whereas the gel is around 90%, allowing it to absorb more heat. Additionally, this assumes that all blocks are held in place by an invisible force, that all energy is taken in as heat. In reality, the blocks could be pushed away instead. This obviously makes it a really bad barrier, as it could hurt anyone standing behind it with debris. The only way to reliably account for this is to have so much weight and pressure that the gravitational and static frictional forces overpower the bomb's kinetic energy. After doing some scuffed calculations, this will require a further 327,399,696,093 blocks, creating a cylinder 11.9 kilometers high. Admittedly, this is a pretty large margin of error, but remember that this is the difference between blocking with everything you have and not allowing it to move at all. For those that are curious, these are the numbers that we get when we apply the same calculations to Little Boy and Fat Man. Blocking a nuclear blast with baby-sized blocks of ballistics gel is good and all, but what if we actually wanted to use babies? In order to appease YouTube's policies and automated checks, I have to find an approach where every baby survives. Would that even be possible? Gentlemen, I present to you the baby array. For this method, we will use a blast wave formed from many coughing babies by utilizing their titular ability, their ability to cough. By accumulating and combining enough coughs en masse, we can create a barrier of air that can
A coughing baby shockwave. Think about it. Think about it. It's not possible.
overpower a nuclear bomb. A human cough is used to clear the airway of mucus, irritants, and debris. It occurs in 4 steps. First, you breathe in, filling your lungs with air. Then, your glottis closes off, preventing any more air from entering or escaping. Expiratory muscles, the ones you use when you breathe out, start squeezing your lungs from all sides. Finally, once adequate pressure is built, the main passage opens and the compressed air rushes out. Once we put it all together, it should look something like this.
Hi, series fauna of HoloLive.
In all seriousness, a cough is actually pretty strong. You might not think that it can amount to much, but it has to have some oomph to clear out the numerous passages in your respiratory system. Apparently, a human
My coughs don't do that. My coughs don't clear out shit. My coughs suck. He's lying.
cough can generate approximately 1 to 25 joules of kinetic energy, giving us an infantile estimate between 9.6 and 240 quadrillion. That is a million times Earth's current population, and if we were to place each baby 1 meter apart, that's enough to cover the entire planet in babies. Sorry, just 6% of that was enough. The other 94% is still in cold storage. Unfortunately, even with this obscene quantity, we're still gonna need a bit of help. See, unlike the previous approach, the stats will not add up cleanly as we increase the number of babies. In order to create a shockwave, we need to squeeze air faster than it can spread out, and the only way to do this is to transfer energy faster than the speed of sound. Essentially, we need to create our own sonic boom, something that we cannot achieve with coughs as the air we propel moves much too slowly. Even with perfect coordination, all the baby array can do is create a worldwide stiff breeze. Maybe enough to create a hurricane or two, but nothing that we can direct or use to repel a nuclear bomb. In order to actually add up all this energy, we either have to superimpose every baby, which is impossible because the entity cramming limit is 1, or we have to exploit physics with a clever scientific apparatus. To artificially produce shockwaves for study, the shock tube was created. It contains an area of high pressure, an area of low pressure, and a membrane that separates the two. This membrane is calibrated to fail at specific pressure differences, and, by some quirk of physics, when it does, it produces a supersonic wave of energy. This is exactly what we need, as we can precisely time and combine the energy these shock tubes produce to additively create a nuke-killing shockwave. Before anyone says this, the design would be like that experimental German artillery bunker, except instead of chemical charges, we use baby-powered shock tubes. Apparently, the cheaper shock tubes can go for around $50, and even when using the lowball estimate, this set of laboratory equipment will set you back a chill $480 quadrillion, over 12,000 times the US national debt. Do you want a bag for that? Once again, these are the numbers that we get when we apply the calculations to Little Boy and Fat Man. Wait, why does it say not applicable? Oh no. Something I forgot to mention was that a nuclear bomb converts a lot of its energy into heat, as in thermal radiation. It didn't play a role in the baby barrier because heat absorption was assumed, but it is a massive wrench in the works when applied to the baby array because unlike a bomb shockwave, it cannot be counteracted with a simple cough. It's like trying to redirect sunlight by blowing on air. These two things are just incompatible. The only counterpoint I could give would be that maybe the aerosols produced by 240 quadrillion coughs could absorb the heat, similar to how clouds absorb heat, but that would honestly take a lot of water, like thousands of hurricanes worth. Since human breaths have just a fraction of a percentage of water, this would bump up our answer into the quintillions. If you're looking for the most impressive of numbers, this would be it. 240 quadrillion with a multiplier to account for the 0.01% of aerosol in the human breath. 2.4 sextillion. Taking our 10 kilogram example, this is a baby ball having 32% the mass of our moon. These are the final numbers compared to Little Boy and Fat Man. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry I couldn't provide a satisfactory answer, being limited by YouTube policies for the first one.
Brother, you provided the answer in a different format. What are you talking about? Alright, I'm ending the stream now. Good night if everybody's still here. Bye.